My brother and my wife betrayed me in the worst way possible, and when I turned to my father, he simply said, "Keep it quiet for the sake of the family image." That was the final straw. That was the birth of my villain arc. So I made a choice, to burn it all down, leaving no room for forgiveness, no chance for reunion. I'm a 30-year-old man with an older half-brother I'll call Jerry, who is 35. My dad had Jerry with his ex-wife, but he left when Jerry was only 6 months old. My mom said they divorced because they just didn't click, though my dad stayed involved in Jerry's life, sharing custody with his ex. 2 years after the divorce, my dad met my mom, and they married within a year. My mom describes it as a fairy tale romance. She remembers sitting in a coffee shop when my dad spotted her outside. It was love at first sight, and he walked in to ask her out. After a few months of dating, he proposed, and my mom said yes right away, convinced they were soulmates meant to be together. So far, so good, right? Unfortunately, about a year into their marriage, my dad cheated on my mom with a coworker. Feeling guilty, he confessed, and my mom chose to forgive him. They went to marriage counseling and tried to work through their issues. My mom believed that having a baby would mend everything, which is how I was born. She sees their story as romantic, but I view my parents as a dysfunctional couple, far from the perfect image they try to project. They cared a lot about keeping up appearances. Even as a child, whenever guests came over, they'd put on an exaggerated display of affection, and everyone would praise them for keeping their spark alive. But behind closed doors, they were just a normal couple. They didn't constantly kiss or hug, and the honeymoon phase was long gone. I eventually realized that this pressure to appear perfect even affected me. I was forced to enroll in numerous classes so I could excel in everything. My childhood was hectic, with hardly any time to relax. It wasn't until high school that I started pushing back and finally got some downtime. My dad made sure that both Jerry and I were top students, not just academically but in all areas. Jerry got into one of the country's top medical schools, and I ended up at an Ivy League college for business. The pressure was immense, and while I don't recommend that style of parenting, I'm grateful it worked out. However, my dad also believed he had the right to control our personal lives, and my mom always backed him up. When Jerry turned 30, my dad told him it was time to start looking for a woman to marry and settle down, insisting that Jerry was getting older and his options were running out. At that time, Jerry was dating his now wife, Tina, 34, and after an on-again, off-again relationship that lasted almost 5 years, they really knew each other well. After that conversation, Jerry got serious about Tina, proposed within a year, and they married 3 years ago. Last year, they even had a baby together. Jerry and I aren't very close, so I didn't hear any of this from him. Instead, I learned it from my dad when he had a similar conversation with me earlier this year. He boasted about convincing Jerry to marry Tina and how happy Jerry was with a wife and son. My dad wanted the same for me. He even brought up his own affair from before I was born, saying he'd felt unfulfilled but stayed committed to my mom. He claimed that having a child grounded him, and suggested I do the same. I took his advice with a grain of salt. I wasn't about to let him dictate my relationship decisions. I had already planned to propose to my girlfriend, Carla, 30, with whom I had been together for 3 years and living together for 2, and I was ready to take the next step. 2 months after my dad's conversation, I proposed on my birthday, Carla accepted, and we married 3 months ago. I thought everything was going well, but clearly, I was mistaken. Even though Carla and I had only been married for 2 months, I had to file for divorce about a week ago after discovering that she'd been having an affair with Jerry ever since we got engaged. The shock hit me hard, and I wouldn't have found out if I hadn't accidentally discovered her burner phone. I couldn't find one of my pieces of clothing, so I searched the house. Carla wasn't home, and I assumed she'd mixed it with her own clothes. While going through her closet, I found something in the pocket of a pair of jeans, another phone. The phone wasn't password protected, and it only had one text thread. The number looked familiar. It was Jerry's. I was horrified, but I kept scrolling through the chat. The text started about 3 weeks after I proposed, and they were flirting like teenagers. A few months into our engagement, they confessed their love for each other and promised to stick it out no matter what. Their plan was to stay with their respective partners until my nephew turned 5 and needed his mother less, then file for divorce and reveal the affair. Jerry would get shared custody of his son, and they would finally be together. I was devastated to read all that, especially realizing they planned to maintain the charade for 5 years. It was insane. I immediately began packing my things so I could leave the house. Carla wouldn't be home until late, so I used the extra time to gather everything I could and took screenshots of the messages on her phone. I then drove to a hotel out of town. I didn't leave her any note, just the burner phone on her bed. I knew she'd understand what it meant. I felt sick knowing that although Jerry and I were never close friends, we were never on bad terms either. From the messages, it was clear that he had made a move on Carla the night of our engagement. I had proposed at my birthday party with friends and family, including Jerry, while I was busy socializing. Apparently, while I was distracted, Jerry and Carla were making out in the backyard. I did notice Carla was absent for a while, but I assumed she was just freshening up her makeup. As I read the texts, it became clear they had been reminiscing about that night, making repeated references to their secret rendezvous. It was disgusting. I had been celebrating with everyone while she was busy making out with my half-brother, a man who was not only married to me but also a father. That evening, I called my lawyer and said I wanted to file for divorce. I made it clear that I didn't want Carla to get any alimony or settlement because I earn significantly more than she does. From the texts, I saw that she even looked down on my profession, saying she'd rather be with a doctor than a glorified accountant. For the record, I co-own a business I started with 2 friends from business school, and we're doing well. I never understood why she demeaned me when she was a corporate employee herself. I always suspected she was materialistic, but this was just heartbreaking. They mocked me behind my back, and I started to despise Jerry. I knew I would eventually tell Tina, ensuring she understood she was married to a liar and a cheater. I just needed the strength to do so. I immediately blocked Carla and Jerry everywhere after finding the phone because I didn't want to hear any excuses. I was done. 2 days after moving to the hotel, I expected at least one of them to apologize, but nothing came. I got a call from my dad on the 3rd day. He started by saying he'd heard about the affair that Carla discovered. I knew something was off when she saw my phone on the bed and called Jerry because I wasn't picking up her calls. Neither of them could reach me until Jerry eventually talked to my dad. My father apologized for what had happened, and at first, I thought he was being supportive. But then he asked me not to tell anyone about the affair yet. I already suspected why, but I pressed him further and recorded his explanation. He admitted that both he and Jerry were afraid I'd tell Tina about it, so they wanted to keep it quiet for now. According to him, since I wasn't willing to speak to Jerry and had even blocked him, he felt it was his duty to let me know that neither he nor my mother wanted me to tell Tina. They argued that, unlike me, Jerry had to consider a child's well-being, and if Tina learned about his affair with Carla, it could ruin his life. Tina, coming from a well-connected family, might use her influence to get the upper hand in any custody battle. Jerry just couldn't accept that. So, through my dad, they were asking me to keep silent and not reveal the truth to Tina. They even mentioned that they'd gotten Jerry to promise to end his relationship with Carla if I was willing to work things out with my wife, much like my mother forgave my dad for his mistakes and managed to build a happy marriage despite everything. I thought it was outrageous for my parents and Jerry to try to convince me not to tell Tina about the affair, especially after all the hurt I'd endured. I couldn't believe they expected me to agree, so I hung up immediately, not wanting to engage further. I was furious. I knew my parents cared deeply about their image, but this was pure madness. There was no way they thought I'd simply keep quiet. It wasn't surprising that cheating runs in the family. My dad wanted silence so that Jerry could avoid the consequences, and they wanted me to sweep everything under the rug, pretending nothing was wrong. They expected me to forgive Carla and Jerry, patch things up, and return to normal, which took a lot of nerve. In the heat of the moment, I decided to text Tina and tell her everything, every detail, including that Jerry had asked my dad to instruct me to keep it all a secret. I even attached screenshots of the messages I'd found on the burner phone. Then I turned my phone off because I didn't want anyone reaching out. I knew things were about to escalate. A couple of hours later, when I thought it was safe, I turned my phone back on and found it flooded with messages and missed calls from my family. Everyone was furious with me, but I only cared about Tina's reply. The first message I saw was from her. She thanked me for being honest and said she knew what to do next. It sounded a bit ominous, but I soon pieced together what she meant. Before long, the messages were full of updates. Tina and Jerry had a huge fight after my text, and Tina had moved in with her parents along with their son. In the aftermath, divorce was a serious possibility, and Tina might even file for full custody, which would be disastrous for Jerry. Even if they shared custody, he'd likely have his time with his son greatly reduced. I still can't understand why my family is blaming me. If they didn't want this outcome, they should have made sure Jerry didn't cheat in the first place. Since I sent that text and Tina left him, I've been bombarded with angry messages. It feels extremely unfair that everyone is blaming me, and even more so to claim that I ruined a happy family. If they were really happy, Jerry wouldn't have cheated. I know I'm right, but I still feel uneasy knowing that Jerry is now miserable. I don't like the idea of him losing full custody, though that doesn't affect me since I don't have kids. I regret telling my brother's wife about the affair with my own wife. Update: it's been almost a week since I sent that message, and Tina has left the house. Things have quieted down a bit. No one is constantly messaging me and blaming me for everything, mainly because I've blocked everyone. I really don't need that negativity in my life anymore. The only person who can still contact me is Carla, since I unblocked her now that the divorce proceedings are about to start. But she's using this time to try and explain that she wasn't thinking straight and apologizes for cheating on me. I'm not sure what she hopes to achieve. It's not working for me. I feel no sympathy for her. In fact, I'm kind of relieved she cheated because it saved me from wasting more time with her. I can't imagine spending a year or more in a marriage only to find out she'd been unfaithful all along, or worse, going on for 5 years before uncovering the affair. I'm trying to look on the bright side and accept that she was never the right one for me. Someone who can commit to marriage and then cheat with my half-brother isn't someone I can ever call my soulmate. I was wrong about her, and I'm grateful for the wake-up call. I'm still staying in a hotel, and so far, no one has been able to track me down, which I appreciate because I honestly don't know what I'd do if they found me. It's only a matter of time before they do, since there aren't many hotels in this area and they know I'm not at the usual spots. I've been working from here, and while it's been lonely and strange, there isn't much I can do about it. My only hope now is that the divorce goes through. She's already been served, but she hasn't responded yet, probably holding on to hope that I might change my mind because of her constant pleas. It's optimistic of her, but it's just not going to happen. Update: Hey everyone, it's been 3 days since my last update. Sure enough, my dad and Jerry managed to track me down. They searched every hotel in the city and, when they couldn't find me there, expanded their search outside of town. Eventually, they spotted my car in the parking lot of the hotel where I'm staying. I had already instructed the front desk not to reveal my presence if anyone asked. When my dad and Jerry confronted the staff, they claimed there was no record of someone by my name staying at the hotel. But since my car was clearly there, my dad and Jerry knew they were lying. They started throwing a tantrum in the lobby, yelling and swearing at the receptionists, which forced the hotel to call me down to handle the situation. When I arrived, security escorted both of them outside, and I went over to talk with them. I had no idea what they wanted from me, since the damage was already done and Tina already knew the truth. My dad and Jerry told me they had a solution to fix what I'd done. They said I was going to be called to testify against Tina in court, and all I had to do was say a few things to make her seem like an unstable wife and mother, which they claimed was the reason Jerry cheated on her in the first place. Their plan was to help Jerry gain full custody. They argued that things weren't looking good for him because, in addition to the cheating, Tina had plenty of other issues that made her look like a bad mother. For example, she wasn't home often, and now that she knew he was out with Carla, it only made his situation worse. They also mentioned other complaints about Tina that painted an even bleaker picture. He insisted he loved his son, yet he never lifted a finger to help. All the baby tasks, changing diapers, feeding him, fell on Tina. No matter how much she asked, he always said he was too tired. And on top of that, he refused to do any chores around the house. Before the baby, Tina managed everything on her own, but now she couldn't handle it anymore and wanted out of the marriage. Honestly, I couldn't see how sharing this with me would help. It only confirmed that I'd made the right decision and that Tina was better off without him. They even had the gall to expect any help from me after hurting me, especially with this mess. They wanted me to lie about Tina so she'd get full custody. That idea was absurd. I told them straight up that I wasn't going to do it and that they meant nothing to me. I walked away without waiting for a response because I knew nothing would change my mind. I even instructed Ed, the security guard, to have them removed from the property, warning him about how dangerous they were. That was enough. They got kicked off the hotel grounds. Still, I had to apologize for their behavior later. The only reason the cops weren't called was that no one wanted bad press, otherwise, my dad and Jerry would have been arrested. Update: It's been 2 days since Dad and Jerry showed up at my hotel, and I haven't heard from them since. Meanwhile, Carla has been texting me a lot more. We've set a date for our first meeting with a court-appointed mediator in a week. Oddly enough, she isn't contesting the divorce, so I wonder why she keeps reaching out. I haven't opened her messages because I simply don't have the energy for more drama right now. I know it'll just be the usual "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this to you" spiel, which sounds hollow. If she really meant it, she'd make more of an effort, maybe even call me, knowing I'm not big on texting. Perhaps she wouldn't have cheated at all if she knew I didn't deserve any of this. Up until a few days ago, she limited herself to just 2 texts per day, but now she's messaging almost every hour. I haven't found the mental strength to check the chat, but I plan to do it soon in case there's something important. Update: Just 2 hours after my last update, I finally checked Carla's messages and learned that she's ended things with Jerry. Apparently, after a recent conversation, she discovered that for him, it was all physical, none of his promises were genuine. She's understandably disappointed because she was serious about their relationship and even started falling for him. Carla apologized for everything she put me through and said that to make up for it, she wasn't going to contest the divorce or seek any settlement or alimony. She admitted she didn't deserve any of it. That solves one problem: I won't have to endure a lengthy fight for myself. I didn't reply immediately because I was at a loss for words. It's sad, but she kind of had it coming. What was she thinking, getting involved with a married man who had a child, especially when she was about to get married herself? It was a foolish decision on her part. In the end, it worked out for me. I'm really glad I checked her messages because it means I need to work even harder on the divorce process. I forwarded all those texts to my lawyer and saved screenshots in case I need them later. Update: It's been a couple of months since I last posted here, and I've been busy. The divorce and everything took much less time once the 90-day waiting period ended in our state. After that, the process was pretty straightforward. Carla kept only the things she bought for herself, and I got everything else, including the house, so I moved back in. She kept her car, and since we hadn't been married for long, our finances were separate, so there was nothing major to sort out. Now, Jerry and Tina are in the midst of their own divorce, and the custody battle is turning ugly. It's a shame for my nephew. However, Tina told me that I'm allowed to see him, which is a huge win because I really adore that little kid, and I hope to have one of my own someday, though probably not with Carla. I'm trying to get my life back on track, and so far, things are looking up. I just hope it stays that way. After things settled down with the divorce, I started focusing on rebuilding my life. I landed a new job that challenged me and allowed me to prove to myself that I was more than the drama I'd left behind. With each passing day, I rediscovered who I was, finding comfort in small routines, morning runs, cooking dinners, and even catching up with old friends I'd neglected during the chaos. I made a point of nurturing the relationships that truly mattered. Spending time with my nephew became a highlight of my week, reminding me that even in broken families, love finds a way. I began to see him grow, and with every smile and laugh, I felt a quiet promise that happiness could bloom again. It wasn't long before I realized that I was ready to explore new beginnings, dating again, and gradually, I met someone who respected my past and supported my future. Carla, too, was moving on. Her decision to end things with Jerry allowed her the space to reevaluate her life. Though we had shared our bitter moments, time softened the edges of our past. We eventually found a mutual understanding, and while our paths diverged, we learned to appreciate the lessons we'd learned from each other. There was no lingering resentment, only a quiet resolve to make choices that honored our worth. As the months turned into a year, the scars of the past faded, replaced by a steady rhythm of growth and healing. I managed to balance work, personal interests, and the newfound relationship with care and honesty. I looked back at the turbulence with a sense of gratitude. It had forced me to confront my truth, redefine my boundaries, and ultimately, craft a life that felt authentically mine. In the end, the resolution was simple yet profound. I was no longer defined by past mistakes or toxic ties. I had taken control of my narrative, rebuilt my home and heart, and emerged stronger. Life, with all its messy turns, had led me to a place of peace and promise, a place where I could truly move forward, knowing that sometimes, letting go is the first step towards a brighter tomorrow.